Clemson? Yes, Miami can beat Clemson. Anybody can lose on any given day. Is Miami better than Virginia? Yes, Miami's better than Virginia. Did Miami beat the crap out of Florida State? Yes, Miami beat the crap out of Florida State. Who else did they beat? UAB, and who was the other one they beat?
Louisville.
All right. Louisville, UAB, and Florida State. That's not the greatest sample size of all great sample sizes. Now, Clemson hasn't beat anybody that's that great either. I'd say Virginia is better than any of the teams that Miami beat so far. And look, this is Miami's Super Bowl. All right. That's the difference between these two programs right now. You can like it or love it. It doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is, this week, this is Miami's biggest game of the year. To Clemson, it's just another bump in the road on the way to another playoff and compete for another national championship. That's the mindset difference. Now, whoever wins this game isn't necessarily out of the playoff picture either, unless one of them gets completely blown out. Because let's say Miami loses, if they run the table and then somehow make it to the ACC championship and beat Clemson, they're in. If their only loss is a close regular season loss in Death Valley, but they're 11-1 ACC champs, they're in. Same thing with Clemson. Clemson could lose a close home game to Miami as long as they run the table and win the ACC champion. They still have Notre Dame to play. Then they would still get in. So this is not a death nail to either team. But what it is I think it's more important to Miami's stake to greatness than it is to Clemson's.
I said some of those same things recently that, and Miami fans don't necessarily like to hear it, that, yeah, it's a much bigger deal to them than it is to Clemson. These Clemson players, I know that they lost a lot, 4 offensive linemen in particular, best wide receiver. You could go on through the defense, Isaiah Simmons on through it. So it's not the exact same team. It's 2/3 of the same team. But these players, they're used to playing in much bigger games than this game. Like, this isn't a big deal. It shows up higher on the scale than Virginia and Wake Forest. Absolutely. They understand who's who and who's got a name and who's got talent, and they're well read and they know who's out there. And so they can rate the games. But these guys have played in playoff games, national championship games, ACC games that mattered more late in the season, ACC championship games. Say what you will about Texas A&M. They played a tight one 2 years ago in Kyle Field at night. They've played bigger games than against Miami. But this shows up on their radar, I think, is, okay, this team comes in at 3-0. We know they got talent. This is a game. This is a team we got to take seriously. But for Miami, yeah, this is the world. This is the biggest game that any of these players have played in. There's no question about it. This team did nothing. They were completely off the radar last year and the year before in the conference race. They lost 5 games in 7 games, 6 games in 7 games, 13 games the last 2 years. They played no important games.
Yeah. So we'll get Miami's best shot. I have no doubt about that. Clemson is one of these teams like Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, the LSUs of the world. They get everybody's best shot. And I have no doubt that Miami will give Clemson their best shot. Can their best shot be good enough? If Clemson plays the way that Clemson normally plays, I think Clemson comes out on top here. If Miami comes out with their hair on fire and Clemson somehow finds themselves in a situation where they're down at the half or sometime in the second half, then it will be it'll be a scary situation for Clemson. But look, this line opened up at 14.5. I think it's up to 15.5 now, depending on which line you're looking at. I think that's about right. I mean, this might be a really hard game to judge what the spread will be. I'm certainly not going to touch it. I predicted it would open around 16, so I wasn't that far off. What do you think about the line on that?
Well, I know that I like it to stay over 14. So if it can, that's pretty key, that it can stay over 14. I'm not playing games. I'm just making predictions this year. Maybe I'll dabble in that later. I typically do from the start. But yeah, for a prediction standpoint, the way I'm leaning right now would be I would want that line to stay over 14. That helps my chances in terms of where my prediction is leaning in terms of the point spread, in terms of the actual winner of the game. If they both come out and play an A game, Clemson wins. If they both come out and play a B game, Clemson wins, et cetera, et cetera. Clemson's got to come out and play like a C+, B-, and Miami's got to stud out as an A+ to win the game. They've got to play a better game. Clemson is a better team. And I made this statement a couple of weeks ago that unless something that I cannot foresee happens in this game, even if Miami walks off the field a 37-34 winner, I'm going to still believe that Clemson's a better team. Now, some people argue with that, and they're like, what are you talking about? The other team just won. I get that. We credit the team that won the game. But college football and sports in general are littered with contests every year where there's no reason to believe, and then it factors out and it proves itself out by the end of the year that the best team doesn't always win that particular night. Usually, of course, they do. 90-some% of the time. But unless I am just blown away by Miami's performance, I'm going to still believe that Clemson's a better team, that they had to kind of give the game away.
I have some bad news for Miami fans. I have been to, I don't know, 30, 40, I lost count, games in Death Valley in my lifetime. I have never attended a Clemson game in Death Valley and watched my Tigers lose, and I'll be there this weekend. So sorry about your luck. I'm the good luck charm.
I guess. And so we're going back how far? In the last 5 years, that wouldn't be a big deal. But
back to the mid 80s when I was a kid. Yeah. I have never seen the Tigers lose at home in person.
All those Furman and Citadel games.
No, I've been to some good games. Been to some good ones. Yeah. The last one, the last big one I was at was in 2015 against Notre Dame. We saw how that turned out. Sure. I've been to one or two every year since then, but mostly against the, Georgia Tech, Boston College, whatever, stuff like that. Wilkie, thank you, sir. Says if Miami wins this weekend, they will be competing for 5th in the ACC. Oh, I didn't say that. He did.